Well, hey everybody, I'm Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com. Welcome right into this Adobe After Effects tutorial where we're going to create a super cool, it's a pretty simple thing. It's a countdown timer, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways to create countdown, count-up timers. We're going to use expressions in After Effects. I think you're going to enjoy it and learn a thing or two while we're at it. If you enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. And with that out of the way, let's jump into After Effects and check this thing out. All right, well, here we are in Adobe After Effects, and let's just jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my text tool, and we're just going to place some text kind of in the middle of the screen, and we'll just type out the word timer. You can really use any text you want because we're going to be replacing this text with our outputted expression / code generated text. I am going to use the typeface. Let me use something a little simpler here. Maybe I'll go with Rail, and I'm going to choose... Let's go with the ultralight. So maybe not thin. We'll go ultralight, just slightly bigger or thicker, I should say. And let's change the color to like a super light blue. Let's try like 00. What would be super blue? CFFF. Something like that. A nice sea blue. Very, very bright. I'm going to go to align and just align this to the centers of my composition. Kind of, sort of, something like that. And we've got our text. So here's how to create a basic counting upward seconds timer. Open up the timer text layer, open up the text sub object, I guess we could call it. Hold down Alt or Option and click on the little stopwatch for source text. And we're simply going to type out time. And we're going to stop. And you can see our text is now replaced with this 0. Now, if I hit the spacebar to begin playing through this expression, you can see we're getting what looks like some crazy math that's being done. And that's because code is pretty precise. Computers in general, fairly precise machines. So we're getting the second at which the playhead is at that very moment, which is 3 seconds and change, and it's displaying as 3.7 because by the time we get to 3:30, that's going to really be 4 seconds. So we're a little over 2/3 of the way there, and sure enough, 7 is a little over 2/3 of the way to 10 when we're talking about decimal numbers, right? We all know that. This doesn't do me much good, though, because when I have a timer on a video and it looks like this, people are going to be having epileptic seizures and all kinds of nasty stuff. So I want to round my number down. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to use a simple math operator here. We're going to say math.floor, round this sucker down to the nearest number, will you? What number? Well, of course, that's going to be time. So we're going to place time within the open and close parentheses. And now when we play through our video, we get a nice, clean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as the speed of our video plays through. So this is really how to just create a very basic counting upward timer. We could take this text, we could align it to the center of our composition like so, and we could just kind of let this thing go, and it'll count all the way up to 300 seconds, which of course is equal to 5 minutes. Why? Because in my composition settings, I have this sucker set to a duration of 5 minutes. So it'll just count as long as your After Effects composition is in existence, and mine is 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and set a simple countdown timer, a timer that's going to count from 60 down to 1, or 60 to 0, really. So what we would do here is we would stick with math.floor, but what we're going to do is add to this. We're going to create, we're going to do a little bit of math. Number one, let me just show you. I'm going to cut this just to show you how this math works. So we could tell this text, look, text be equal to 100, and boom, it's equal to 100. We could also say, look, text be equal to 100 minus 32, and it's going to be equal to 68, right? We could say 100 maybe plus 32, in which case it'll be 132. What I'm trying to show you here is that we can perform math within our expressions. I could use an asterisk instead and say 100 times 32, and it's going to be 3,200, all right? Or, of course, divided by 32 as well, and it's going to be 3.125, 3 1/8. So all of that to just say, I can perform a little bit of math in here. So I can say, look, math.floor be equal to 60 minus whatever the time is. So you can see what's going to happen is it's going to begin at 60, and when the playhead gets to 1, it's going to subtract 1, which of course is 59. When the playhead gets to 2, it's going to subtract 2, which is 58, 57, and so on and so forth. So now we have a timer that begins at 60 and counts down 1 second at a time, and eventually it's going to hit 0. Now, of course, when it hits 0, because we haven't put any limitations on it, it's just going to keep going into the negative numbers. How to tackle that? That's a whole different thing. We'll get to something similar to that in a little bit. But you can see very quickly, we've created a very basic counting upward timer and a very basic counting downward timer. Let's talk about the more advanced timer, though. This is where things get fun. Let's clear out this quick expression here. The goal of our timer is going to be to create a timer that the user can input a number and have it count down from that number. Let's go ahead here and right-click and choose New. By the way, notice it just refilled our text when we got rid of the expression stuff with our original text. We're going to go here, right-click New, and choose New Null Object. And I'm going to double-click on this. I'm not going to double click on it. I'm used to working with Photoshop layers. I'm going to right click on it and choose rename. I still have not gotten used to that after all the time I've used After Effects. I'm going to name this timer duration or something like that. Because onto this null layer, we're going to come over here to our effects and presets panel. I'm going to search for the slider. There it is, slider control. We're going to drag and drop this here onto the null object layer. And now we have this slider control. So the idea is going to be a user should be able to punch into the timer. Look, I want my timer to start at 5 minutes and count down from there. So they would just punch in the number 5, let it be, and the timer would go to work starting at 5 and count down. So I'm just going to leave this at 0. We'll get back to the slider in just a moment. So the first thing we'll do is we will set a rate of speed for our timer. I'm going to do the work again here inside the source text area of our timer text. So Alt-Option-click on that, and we've opened up our expressions. Our default text has gone away. That's fine. I'm going to begin by creating a variable. Now, when you're creating your own stuff and you're more advanced with expressions, you can create super short variable names that you know what they mean. But for the sake of tutorials, I like to work with more literal, longer variables so everybody kind of is on the same page. So our first variable is going to be called rate of speed, and I'm camel coding here. That's where the first letter is not capitalized and every letter thereafter is capitalized. So we're going to say, look, rate of speed equals, let's just go with 1. So this is the rate at which our timer is going to move, just 1 at a time, 1 unit, whatever that means. Now we're going to create the starting time. So I'm going to hit enter return. We're going to place another variable, and we're going to call this clock start time. Again, we're camel coding. And we're going to say this is equal to, what's it equal to? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's toggle down our null object, and within effects, we have this slider control. And within slider control, we have this slider, and it's outputting a number. So what we want to do is come back over to here and place our cursor after the equals sign for clock start time, and then use this little pick whip icon and say, look, it's going to be equal to this number here, this slider number. There we go. And After Effects puts this long line of code in there. That's perfect. Now I'm going to hit the semicolon to just close off that line of code and be done with it. Now you can see, of course, our slider control is set to 0. We have a 0 out there. We're not really outputting much of anything. We're just building our variables right now, so I'm not really concerned with anything, but we aren't triggering any errors, not yet at least. What we next want to do is get After Effects to spit sort of a continuously changing countdown number back at us so we can use it and display it here in our text field. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create another variable, so I'm going to hit enter return a few times here. In fact, I'm even going to drag my expression window downward a little bit just to open up a little bit of space for us to use. Down here, I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to call this clock time. I'll call it clock time number. And I'll say, look, clock time number, you're going to be equal to my rate of speed. So rate of speed, that's that rate of speed variable. Really, that's basically I'm typing the number 1. But you're going to be the rate of speed multiplied by time. So whatever the second is at which my playhead is, that's what you're going to be multiplied by. So 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3, and so on and so forth. And this might seem a little redundant. It is, unless you want to change the rate of speed. Maybe you want your countdown timer to move at double speed. Then all you have to do is update rate of speed to 2, and all of a sudden you have a timer that's going to move twice as fast. So that's the reason I'm building it this way. I'm going to throw a semicolon onto the end of this, and I'm going to deselect. You can see here if I drag the playhead that we're going to get, we do have a continuously changing number now, but it's a little crazy, right? It's just kind of going wild. There's all these decimals. Well, how do we fix the decimal issue? Just like we did before with a simple math.floor. So let's change clock time number here. We're going to say, look, clock time number, you're definitely equal to this, but before we get to that, we're going to say math.floor. And then here we're going to place this little mathematic problem within those parentheses, and that's going to kind of simplify things for us. You can see now we're just spitting back nice, clean, beautiful numbers. And if we play through it, you can see it's just going to advance 1 second at a time. Now, like I said, if we change rate of speed, let's say we want it to go 5 times faster, change rate of speed to 5, and watch how fast the numbers jump now. You see that? We're moving 5 times. It's going up 5 numbers every second. So that's where the little rate of speed thing can be nice if you want to have extra flexibility and control over your countdown clock. And if you don't, hey, just leave rate of speed at 1, and you got a perfect countdown clock by the second. So now we need to link this here to whatever the slider number is that's taken in by our clock start time variable. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come in here. We're going to say, yeah, we're still going to work within math.floor, but what I'm going to say is, use my clock start time variable and subtract rate of speed times time. So this could be something as easy as, let's say clock start time is 60. So start my timer at 60 and then just subtract by 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5. And as the playhead moves down, obviously this number here, rate of speed times time, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as that's subtracted from clock start time, well, guess what? Our countdown clock is going to display a smaller and smaller and smaller number. Now, the problem is, our slider right now is at 0. So I'll drag through this, and you can see we're just getting this crazy negative number because it's starting with 0 and just subtracting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth. So we're going to change slider here. We're going to say, well, of course, we want this to be 5 minutes, so we'll set this to 5. But watch what happens. It sets our timer for 5, but it's, boom, we're right back down to 0 because this is really just seconds. If we want 5 minutes, we have to start this at 300 because 300 divided by 5 is 60, or rather I should say 5 times 60, 5 minutes is 5 units of 60 seconds. 5 times 60 equals 300. And our problem, of course, is going to be that this is no timer, just a thing counting down from 300 to 0. Yeah, sure, over the course of 5 minutes, look at that. We're back down to 0. But this is not a very effective or easy way to work. So let's change a couple things here. So number one, we can use the slider and punch in a minute number that we want. And also, so our clock will display seconds and minutes instead of just this giant 300 number. To make this easier for people who be coming in and using our slider, let's change the way the clock start time takes the number from the slider. So right now it's just literally taking the number off the slider. But remember, we can do math. So why not just add a asterisk 60 to the end of this? So we'll say, look, take the number there from the slider and just multiply it by 60. So if somebody types in 5, instead of being 5 seconds, make it 5 times 60, which would be, hey, 300 seconds. Now right now the slider's at 300. So when I click away, we're at 18,000. Little excessive, I understand. But now we can go to slider, say, look, yeah, I want 5 minutes. And there we are, 300 seconds. We still aren't displaying minutes and seconds, but we're going to get to that. So I don't know if you've noticed, but whatever the last variable that we type is, that is what our source text is respecting and displaying here in the text field. So let's go ahead and choose something else to display. Like if I just type down here 1000 and I click away, you can see that the text field is going to display the number 1000. That doesn't do us any good though. Let's do something that's a moving dynamic number. Let's take our clock time number. So we're going to say clock time number, where we're doing all this math.floor, clock start time, yada, yada, yada. And we know that right now, if I, well, you know what, here, let's display it. If I display that and just leave it as it is, it's going to display 300 because 5 times 60, which is what this ends up being, is 300. But it's only 300 when the playhead is at the very beginning. That doesn't do me any good. I need to start breaking this down by the minute. So let's try dividing this by 60 and see what happens. Well, hey, there we go. This is a good start. We got 5 minutes. And as we begin dragging the playhead, we're getting these crazy decimals again. But look at what happens. If I drag this out to the 1 minute mark, we display a straight even 4 minutes. So everything at 30 seconds, it should be about 4.5. Yeah, there we go, 4.5. That's 4.5. So we're getting the correct information. Now it's a matter of using the code to format it so it looks and acts like a timer. So let's, I'm going to wipe this out for a second. We'll bring it back in a minute if we need. I want to create a couple variables here because I want to hold the number for our minutes and then I want to hold a number for our seconds. So let's create a variable called minutes, and we're going to say, all right, minutes, you're going to be equal to math.floor, open and close parentheses, and the minutes are going to be that clock time number simply divided by 60, right? That gave us that nice even 5. And if we math.floor it, it's just going to be 5 until it's 4, and then it's going to be 4 until it's 3, and 3 until it's 2, and so on and so forth. So that's good. That's going to give us a nice even minute. And then seconds, this one has to be a little bit more complex, but it's still pretty easy to do here. We're going to say seconds equals that same clock time number. We're not going to divide it by 60 here. Instead, we're going to use what's called a modulus, and that's going to be the percentage symbol, so Shift 5 on my keyboard, and here we're going to say modulus this 60. Now, what exactly the modulus is doing, it has to do with taking the remainder of a divided number and all kinds of complicated math stuff. I'm not really good with math stuff. Here's what I know it does. It basically is going to say, look, take this clock time number, which right now is 300, and force it to work within a loop that only goes up to 60 and then resets itself to 0, and it'll do that as many times as it has numbers. So how many units of 60 fit into 300? Well, of course, we know that's 5 because we've just talked about it ad nauseum at this point. So this is going to give us a number that begins at 60, slides its way back down to 0, and then resets to 60, just like a stopwatch or a countdown timer should. I'm going to add a little semicolon to the end of that line. And now, what do we want to display in our text field? Well, we can simply type it out. Look, I want to see the minutes, right? I want that to display in this text field, whatever the number is. So if I just leave minutes, I'm going to get my minutes. That's not enough, though. I need seconds, too. So we're going to say minutes plus seconds. And watch what happens here. Here, I can play through this, and we're getting kind of a complicated looking, I don't know what's going on here. Well, here's what we need to do. We need to actually place a specific string in here. So we could say minutes plus, and then open and close double quotes, and we want to place some text in here. So we want to display text, and by placing double quotes, it's going to tell our expressions, look, actually type out the word or letter or symbol that we place in here. So I'm going to place a colon, and then I'm going to say plus seconds. So we're saying, look, display minutes, plus then display the semicolon, plus then after the semicolon, display the seconds. And let's see what we've got. Hey, look at this. Now as we scroll through, we have something that resembles a timer. And let's see if it works. Let's go up to the slider and set this to 3 minutes instead. Look at this. We begin at 3 minutes. And now we're going down to 2 and 1 and so on and so forth. Very, very cool. I'm going to set it back to 5 here in the slider. So we've got a 5-minute timer. And by the way, if you want to see, I could change this and I could say, look, type out the word tutvid in between the letters. And you can see the word tutvid would type out. That obviously doesn't make a lot of sense for our timer, so we're going to stick with the colon. Here's where things get a little bit more complex, as if this lot of code didn't look complex enough to you. We need to create a function because obviously we're missing a 0. And maybe we want a 0 to be out here next to the 5 because what if we punch our timer up to 10, right? It's going to have extra numbers. So maybe we always want there to be a 0 next to the 5. And of course, we need there to be a 0 that shows up there. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to place a function. I'll place a function right up here between our top 2 variables and this next variable, just because it looks good here. So I'm going to type out the word function, just tell the expressions, yep, we're going to create a function, and then I'm going to give the function a name. So I'm going to give this function the name of add0. Again, we're camel coding. And in parentheses here, I'm just going to put the letter N. This is just sort of a placeholder. You're going to see exactly how this works in a minute. Just type it out. I'm not even going to try to explain it because it's just basically a returned number, but that I understand that means nothing to you at this point in time. Let's create an open curly bracket, enter return a couple times, close curly bracket, and then hit the tab key to indent. And in here, I'm going to place an if-else statement. So I'm going to say, look, if that returned number N, whatever that is, we don't even know what it is right now, if that is less than 10, closed parenthesis, we want you to return a 0. And we want the 0 to be a string. So we put this within double quotes. A string is just a piece of text. It's not a data number. Like this is a number. It's not the same as typing number. This is a number that the expressions in After Effects can do math with. You can add numbers together. You can't add, like if I say 0 plus 25, that doesn't work. It would just literally display 0 plus 25 in my text field. So we're going to say, look, return the letter 0, the number 0, plus whatever this N number is. What does this mean? This seems complex. Hang with me here a second. I'm going to show you. And then the else part of the if statement, here we're going to say else, simply return the N number. And then a semicolon here at the end. So what exactly does this function mean? Well, basically, what we're going to be telling our expression here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to open up my expression panel a little bit more. What we're going to be telling our little expression here is when we use this function, if the returned number, which is going to be any number it can be, it's this variable, it can change, if it's less than 10, return a 0 plus that number. I know what you're thinking. It still doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, let me just show you what we're doing here. Okay, so we want our timer to have the minutes plus the colon plus the seconds. But instead of seconds, we want this to be our function. So I'm going to say, look, add 0. And then in parentheses, hey, doesn't this look familiar? If I get rid of N, we got the same exact thing here. But instead of typing N, this is where N is going to be defined, and N is going to be seconds. So whatever number seconds are, which right now it's 0, that becomes N. So what is the if statement saying? The if statement is saying, look, if N is less than 10, return a 0 plus whatever N is. So what's going to happen when I commit this? Well, the function's going to look and say, wait, is the seconds less than 10? Yes, it is. It's 0. Therefore, it's going to place a 0 on the left side of this currently existing 0. But as soon as that N is greater than 10, it's simply going to return the seconds, which can be 11 and 12. Once we've got it 11 and 12, we don't want an extra 0 there because then it'll be 0, 11. That doesn't look good. So check this out. We now have 2 zeros. So let me just move through this. There we go, 459. You know what, I should probably move up here so we can see it in action, right? You can see that. Look, there we are at 10. And as soon as we get to 09, we've got 09, 08, 07, 06, 05. And then as soon as it's greater than 10 again, when it's equal to 59, well, the zeros go away. See, real quick, let me show you. If I just add 0 to this, I say, look, if N is less than 10, return 0 plus N, else return just N, which is just the raw seconds. If I do the same thing here and I say, look, return 0 plus N here as well, you see we got the 0 next to 59 as well. Because despite the fact that our N, the seconds, is greater than 10, we're still telling it to return an extra 0 being attached to that seconds number. We don't want that though, obviously, because we want it to look like a proper timer. It's a little complicated, I understand, but as you kind of sit here and think about it and conceptualize it, it'll start to make sense, especially if you build this along with me. And oh, by the way, we can come over here and add the 0 to the minutes as well. Sorry, I keep rolling over my toolbar there. I can add the 0 to the minutes as well, which is going to go ahead and say 03 minutes. And if I push my timer up to something like 10 minutes, and I slide back to near the beginning, there's no 0 next to the 10. So you can, you've got some personal preference here. I think I kind of like the 0. We'll probably just stick with it for the sake of sticking with it and learn to love it. Now, another thing we want to do is just limit the slider to prevent the problem that would arise if somebody tries to set a negative number here. So let's create another if statement here. I'm going to create this one down here at the bottom. So I'm going to say, look, if, and then in parentheses, clock start time. Remember, that's going to be basically what the slider is equal to. If clock start time is greater than 0, I'm going to add some spaces between this stuff. If it's greater than 0, open curly bracket, enter return a couple times, close curly bracket, make my expression window a little bit larger even. If the clock start time is greater than 0, well, we're going to let you execute this double function here and display what we want you to display. And we'll come down here outside of the curly bracket and we'll say else. If the clock start time is less than 0, open and close curly bracket there, semicolon. And within those curly brackets, we want it to just display static text. So open and close quotes, and we're going to say 00:00. And then I will click away. And we can play through this. The timer still works like normal, but if I come up here to the slider and I try setting this to like -5, look at that. It just displays zeros across the board and nothing's happening when I drag and move the playhead around because we just kind of locked it down because we don't deal with time in the negative space. So now there's one more problem or issue that we need to tackle here, and that is when we get all the way to the end, we're going to see some negative numbers. Now, we're not seeing them here because, of course, we have a 5-minute composition here and we have a 5-minute timer, but if I let's try changing the timer to like 3 minutes, and you can see here, yeah, when we get out past 3 minutes, we start getting these negative numbers that look pretty awful, right? How do we fix this? Well, we need to add something to our if-else statement. So we'll come back here to if, and we're going to add a second parameter. Not only does clock start time have to be greater than 0 before you execute my time function here, or my bit of math that's going to display that, but I want it also to something else needs to be going on here. So I'm going to use a double ampersand. That is the way you say and. So not only clock start time needs to be greater than 0, and also time, make sure I put space there between the ampersand and time, and the time needs to be less than whatever clock start time is. So remember, if clock start time is 3 minutes, once the time gets past 3 minutes, well, guess what? It's going to trigger the else statement, which is just going to set our countdown timer to zeros across the board. Let's see what happens here. Well, here we are. We're out past 3 minutes, and sure enough, we're down to 0. So when we get to 3 minutes, we hit zeros across the board, and then it just stays 0 all the way out. So it's a bit of code. I'm going to include this here. Probably there's a comment or over on the blog, so if you don't want to go through all of this shucking and jiving to write this code and you just want to copy and paste it, you'll of course be able to do that. But I wanted to really take a nice deep dive and walk through how all this code works so you understand it when you're going ahead and trying to write and build your own expressions here in Adobe After Effects. And yeah, I guess that'll pretty much wrap this one up. There you have a simple counting up timer, a counting down timer, and then the more advanced kind of better looking timer in Adobe After Effects. If you enjoyed this tutorial, again, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you never miss any After Effects or video editing tutorials, past, present, or future. If you're on Discord, check out our Discord server. It's a happening place and we're growing super fast. Discord.me/tutvid. And if you do Instagram, you can follow me over there at tutvid as well, where I try to do a live show just about every day. And that's a whole bunch of fun as well. Guys, for just a bunch of stuff about expressions, I really can't put it any other way than that. A bunch of stuff about expressions. For all of that and more, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.